Ladies and gentlemen, how are we going? Welcome to a crappy start to the Tuesday Night Live show, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. I've only just got home from work. Peter's only just got home from work, I think. We're all here. We're all fired up. I got my camera sorted. What a disaster. Peter, how you going?
I'm really well, mate. We made it, so that's the main thing.
That's exactly right. I had myself muted for half the intro, and the music was shit, and I was fighting with my camera, and oh my god. Anyway, look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord, of course, and on YouTube. G'day to everyone on the live show chat, and also those who have joined us in the live studio audience. Don't forget, Tuesday Night Live is all about interaction, isn't it, Peter? So we welcome anyone who wants to.
Yeah, it sure is. Good to see some people there in the audience, and please feel free to jump in and have a chat.
Absolutely. That's what we want. Peter, did you happen to avail yourself of the disaster that was the Essendon game on the weekend?
I did have a look, and it was a bit of a hard watch. I've generally been pretty positive this year, and I've remained positive in pretty much every game. I think I've been pretty proud of that record, but really struggled to find something to grab onto Friday night. I think what was disappointing for me is just the way that we came out and played that really incredibly defensive, slow game style. I'm not quite sure what it was about, and it was really, really disappointing. And I think I said to you, Fiend, in private, that performance was at the feet of the coaching staff.
Yep.
And I think that the players are obviously playing to instruction, and I think that I'm not sure whether there just wasn't the buy-in for that, or I mean, it just was not the same team that we've seen play on a number of occasions this year. And I just felt that the way that they started off in the first quarter just lost all momentum. There was just I just didn't think we really recovered from that. And so I'm prepared to. I think I'm just going to give a pass to the players really on that one. And I have to say, Fina, and as I said, I try and stay positive, but I felt really a little bit annoyed at the press conference, at Matty Nick's press conference. Don't know whether you caught it.
I did.
But he really laid it squarely on the feet of the players, and I just don't think that the players would have just gone out and played like that without instruction. And there was no mention of that in his presser. That was complete. I was surprised that no one asked him about it, but it was glossed over. And I really
don't expect a lot from AFL media, mate.
Yeah, but I felt really disappointed that he was quite happy to throw the players under the bus. But that was just my opinion. I mean, in terms of players, I thought that Harry was just had probably his best game of the season. I think he was terrific.
I'd agree with that.
Not much more in the kit bag, though, I don't think, on Thursday night.
No, Macca and I talked a lot about selection and game style and player buy-in on Sunday, and what you've said kind of reflects what we thought, basically, that it was just very lacklustre all around. There's a few people, PJ Crows amongst them, who would suggest that it was just a full-on tank. And I don't think the coaching staff necessarily set the team up for a win, do you?
No, it's a very hard one to argue against when you see selection as it was, and you see them come out and start playing like that. I mean, they played in the first quarter. They played like they had a 16-point lead with 2 minutes to play.
2 minutes to go. Exactly right. 100%. There was no intent to score. It was just all the intent was around around keeping the ball off Essendon, and they did that until they ran out of skills, and then Essendon just waltzed in and kicked a goal. So anyway,
Yeah, I mean, it's not a long-term solution, is it?
I wouldn't have thought.
To a fast, hard-running team, you would have thought, look, I mean, I think that with some of the games that we've seen, you would have backed the game to just be a bit of a shootout, maybe, and maybe we lose by 6 goals, 18-11 or 18-12 or something like that, and
yeah,
we probably would have all gone away happy with that. A little bit like the Brisbane game, I suppose, in some ways.
Yeah,
but no, it wasn't to be.
I mean, I guess the tank conversation is, I don't know whether it's valid or not, but I think what disappointed me the most is that they decided to play that kind of a game style against a team that was, for all intents and purposes, even with us on the ladder. I mean, I think they were a game in front of us on the ladder, so they're right around our benchmark. And I would have thought that they would have come out and at least tried to attack and see how it panned out, but to play like that was silly. Anyway, let's not dwell on that because I don't think it was worth dwelling on. Sloan Ranger 3 in the chat says, Harry's performance would have made me proud. It damn well did. He did a fantastic job on Darcy Parish and got a bit of the agate himself too, Pete. And just a glimpse of what's to come from young Harry, I think.
Absolutely. As you say, it wasn't just the fact that he did a good job running around with Darcy Parish, who's probably the form mid in the competition. It was the fact that he got 20 odd himself, kicked a lovely goal. There's just so much to like there with Harry, and he just has great vision. Just little things, little knock-ons, he's just a very, very high IQ player, and really like watching him play.
Yeah. All right, well, let's first of all deal with some injury issues. And, of course, the news out today that Luke Brown is going in for surgery. So that's him done for the season. So it'll be interesting to see who... I mean, obviously, Chase will probably drop back there, but that'll mean someone needs to fill Luke's spot in the longer term. Of course, we had Ben Davis come in as a medical sub, which was weird. Long-term solution. Will Hamill just stays in, do you think?
Oh, look, he probably does. He's been a little bit underwhelming this year, Will.
Yeah.
He's had some nice moments, but just haven't seen that kind of consistency that we'd like. You'd really like to try and, when he's a kid who runs and can kick and all those good things, you would just hope that you might get a little bit more production out of him. But with that said, he's actually quite a good lockdown player as well. We probably underestimate that a little bit. He tackles really well. He's very, very good with his one-on-one. So, that I'm probably being a little bit harsh. And maybe...
Vardy talks about McPherson. We've got West Coast this week. They've got a big, strong forward line, Peter. The thing that worries me a great deal about Will Hamill is just his lack of... not only his lack of size, but also just his seeming inability to brace his body. He just ragdolls around all the time.
Yeah, it is a real... it's just terrifying every time you see him caught in a tackle. You just feel like he's going to end up, 3 metres beneath.
He doesn't seem to have any ability to tighten his body and to brace for impact or... like it just... I don't know. It's something that I haven't seen very often from an AFL player, and it's a real concern for mine. Whether they opt for the stronger McPherson, at least for this week against West Coast, or whether they stick with Will, who came in for Elliot Himmelberg in a very, very strange unlike swap when the bird got sick. I don't know. Look, we've talked about some other changes, but just to reiterate, Luke Brown having surgery on his Achilles, that's pretty much troubled him his whole career to one degree or another. Tom Duday obviously stays out, so whether they stick with Benny Davis or whether that gives Josh Worrell an opportunity, I'm not quite sure, or maybe even Mackesy, or maybe even Balllace. What do you reckon about that one?
Yeah, look, I know you were talking to him just before, but Andy McPherson, you'd think he had 25 on the weekend in the Sandful and looked to be back into some pretty good form. So he's a guy that can play smaller or taller, I suppose. Would like to. I really wouldn't mind seeing Fisher Mackesy, being close to an inclusion. He had I think 6 marks, 19 possessions on the weekend. Just started to look a little bit more assured, I thought. I don't know what you thought about Fisher, but I think that he's certainly around the mark. I think that that Borlase is a little bit off the mark, and Josh Worrell, I feel a little bit sorry for because he looks to be getting the Benny Davis treatment. One horrible game up in Cairns, and then not to be seen again. I'd really like. And look, this is a little bit of a hangover from years ago, Fiend, and because you know that I was always a G for him. Really would just 5 years or however long it's been. I think 5 years on an AFL list. Do you reckon we might be able to see Ben Davis get 2 games in a row? Well, after 5 years, what do you think?
Well, I would like to see him played up forward. I know he's been played off half-back in the SANFL, but with Tex out, and we'll talk about Tex in a minute, but with Tex out on the weekend, one thing we really lacked was that link-up player, and Ben's played that role in the past. Of course, we've got Tom Lynch in the twos as well, who, that's his bread and butter, but I was very surprised to see them stick with Ben down back for the whole game last week. I would have thought that he would have been given a run up forward to try and provide us with an extra option rather than just bombing it into 40. Has the ship sailed on Ben Davis, though, Pete, do you think?
I reckon it probably has. I reckon it probably has. But, I find his treatment and his development inexplicable, that you could have a kid 5 years on your list and he could play 2 games in 2 separate seasons, and that's it. The first game being against Geelong down at the category when, I don't know, there was probably 8 players playing their 400th game. That's what usually happens.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. Both his games have been in very trying conditions. I mean, I don't know. I thought he looked all right against Sydney in that round 1 game. I thought he did a few good things, and then COVID hits, and then then we don't see him again. And so I just, you can only make the assumption that his cards are stamped. But I would just, for heaven's sake, when there's just no reason not to at this stage of the season, why wouldn't you now give him? I mean, he didn't look out of place. I didn't think on Friday night. I think he picked up 7 or 8 possessions in the half that he was on. Just give him a go. Yeah. Well, look, I'm finding selection a little bit baffling since the bye. I had this conversation with Macca on Sunday. Why Fogarty wasn't brought in for Tex, I'll never know. No. I know he didn't have much output the week before, but we've seen what Billy Frampton gives us. We've seen what Elliot Himmelberg gives us, notwithstanding Elliot dropped out anyway. We've just signed Darcy for 2 more years. He's been on our list almost since bloody 91, for God's sakes, when we started. And I just do not understand why they refuse to give him the keys to that forward line. I just don't understand it. So that's one baffling decision. Keeping Billy Frampton in, I know that we needed some sort of chop out for Riley O'Brien. Billy Frampton tries hard. He seems to lack confidence at AFL level. As Macca said on Sunday, he's a bit of a tweener. He's too good for SANFL and doesn't appear to be good enough for AFL. But we've seen what he provides. There was a golden opportunity to play one of Fogarty, Cook, or Lockie Gallant on the weekend. If we weren't going to play Fogarty or Tommy Lynch. And I just found that the makeup of the side. I didn't think Lockie Murphy deserved to come back in after 1 week. I don't think he's that good a player to come in after 1 week. I don't know. I'm just a little bit confused by the whole selection policy at the moment.
It's very, very difficult. I mean, when we had what I thought was a forward line that we could just sort of start building around, which was Fogarty, Thilthorpe, and Walker.
Yep.
And then we lose Walker, and suddenly we throw the toys out of the pram.
Yep.
I would hope that this week they'd be calling back Walker if he's fit, but if not, certainly Lynch. Fogarty's had 19 possessions, 9 marks, and 2 goals too. We'll have to come back into the side surely on the back of that performance.
Can we just leave him in the team, for God's sakes? Just leave him in the team. Let the kid play and leave him in the team. And they've obviously made a call on him. They've given him another 2 years just a month ago. So play the kid, for God's sakes. And Rabbit, I disagree. He didn't do nothing. He wasn't great, but he didn't do nothing. And he certainly did more than bloody Frampton. And at least when he lines up for a shot at goal, you know he's going to give it a good shake, whereas Frampton just about kicks it sideways. So I've got no time for Frampton. I'd rather see Himmelberg get a run than Frampton, for God's sakes, as a second ruck. In fact, at some stage, I'd like to see Himmelberg played as a first ruck and give Riley O'Brien a chop out. Not this week.
Well, absolutely. And I think I talked about that last week. I'd like to see Elliott would just be given a full game in ruck. I think he's actually a very underrated and very good ruckman. I think he'd do okay. So, yeah, it was a little bit unfortunate that he went down with that illness on the weekend. So he may well be in the frame. He may be in the frame. Lynch is going to come back in. You would think Fogarty will come back in. Frampton 17 possessions, 11 marks. He looks good on paper, but it was really ineffectual. So you would think that he would go back out. But who knows? The selection, it's very, very difficult. You know, when you look at that selection and you couple that with the game style that they came out with, very, very hard not to talk about the T word. It really is. But anyway.
Yeah, well, that's right. So the Crows say that Tex will be integrated back into training today. Training again on Thursday, and then see how it comes up. Matty Crouch making strong progress, and actually trained with the main group this week, but they still haven't set a date for him. Seedsman had a corky in the calf, but is expected to come up. So we've got Dede out, Tex a test, Crouch not ready, Talia not ready, Brown out for the season, Miller out for the season, Hinge out for the season. So the cup is getting a little bit bare, and West Coast will be absolutely smarting up after getting rolled by North Melbourne on their home deck. Macca has maintained for a month that they aren't that good, and I'm starting to agree with him. They rely on too few, that team. I think you're right. But I think they'll hit back. Be very, very surprised if they don't hit back at it this week. Yeah. Look, I don't know. Anyway. So that covers off injuries and selection, mate. What else have we got quickly to talk about? They've released the fixture for rounds 19 and 20. So we'll be playing the Bulldogs in round 19 at Mars, which is just a graveyard. And round 20, we've got the Hawks at Adelaide on the Saturday evening. And that could be quite a pivotal match, the Hawthorn game, because we're now getting to the pointy end, and I've noticed the AFL media is starting to chirp up a little bit about Jason Horn and the likelihood of Horn going to North Melbourne with number 1. I did a ladder predictor on the weekend, Pete, and I had it finishing, I think, 14th or 15th. I don't see us dropping down to 17th, do you?
No, I don't, and I think that there's a very, very. I think there's a quite a possibility that Hawthorn will end up with the spoon because they've got a terrible run home, and they've already dropped well below our percentage, and so I think that it may well be between them and North Melbourne. I don't think that we'll get to that point of being in a position to choose Jason. I think that will be beyond us, and I think we would have to. I don't know what I thought. Yeah, that's true. Vardy Magic says Hawks will out tank us. They probably will. We wouldn't be clever enough to out tank Clarkson.
No, we left our run a bit late.
I think we'd have to run a bit late, and I think that. But mind you, if we see weird goings on like we saw last weekend, then who knows what they've got in mind. But even if we lost every single game from here, we would still need both North and Hawthorn to win one besides the one that they've got drawn against us. So I still can't see that happening.
Yeah. So, given Jason's, we'll just digress on this just for a minute and a couple of questions without notice, Pete. But given the talk around, the draft now, what chance us throwing everything but the kitchen sink at North Melbourne or Hawthorn to see if we can grab pick one?
Oh, look, I don't think there's anything that they would take, Fiend, to be perfectly honest. And the reason I say that is because I think that it's shaping as a draft very, very similar to the Rao draft, where there was that one player.
Yeah.
I suppose it was possibly Anderson as well. And then there was a little bit of distance between. So in this one, you've got Dacos, Darcy, and Horn, and those three kind of stand out.
Is there what's the kid from Sandringham's name? Finnegan? Is it Finnegan from
Finn Callaghan?
Finn Callaghan? That's it. He seems to be in the conversation a bit, but not a bona fide midfielder. So I don't think he'd rate a top 3 or 4.
No, it's very, very difficult at the moment, and it has been because of the fact that the champs are delayed. Now, in any normal given season, the champs would be sort of probably well underway by now. But because they're not being played until September, it's going to be very, very difficult for anybody to assess how these kids are, against their peers. And so everyone's flying blind, other than the fact that Horn's had so much exposure.
Yeah,
and he's had continuing exposure. Like every 3 or 4 weeks a clip shows up about something dramatic that Horn's done at SANFL league level. It's because it's being covered.
Yeah,
it's available. There's footage, and so he's getting a lot of publicity. But
and if he's going to tackle Darcy, like that's obviously going to. I mean, come on, Jason, just tone it down a little bit, could you?
Yeah, although I didn't much like his that. You just see that footage they released where he at stoppage he balks around and then just blasts into the. Junior coaches would absolutely scream at that. He had 2 players free.
Yeah.
All he needed to do was he just needed they flog them Fiend at 16s and 18s level with they just want the basics.
Yeah.
Just hit the basic. Just take the basic option. He had 2 guys there completely by themselves. All he had to do was handball, and then it's a run in and it's a deep entry. Did you see the end of the footage? He ends up kicking to a contest and the Eagles just clear. So it was a horrible. It looked nice.
Yeah.
The possession looked nice, but the decision making was appalling.
It's a bit off. Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't much like it. But anyway, no one's perfect, of course. But it's it's going to be very tricky. There's about I reckon half a dozen under those. But any one of those could shape as being good players, and so they just got to. There's been there's a lot of good players that weren't taken at pick 1, Fiend, and so there's a lot of great players running around out there that were taken between 2 and 8. So
100%. And drink up those listening, 100%. I just think he's going to be a standout. I honestly don't disagree with the concept of what you're saying. Like, what can we throw at North Melbourne? I just honestly think that they would have him like signed, sealed, and delivered. I reckon North, and if not Hawthorn, and I don't think that they'll budge. Flight risk play a role at all?
Well, he's the interviews that I've seen of him, he's a Fremantle supporter, and he said that if he was staying in Adelaide, he'd prefer to play with Port Adelaide.
God damn it!
that was his interview. I think his stepfather is Fabian Francis.
Yeah, that's correct. So he's
got a connection with Port Adelaide as well, and so I don't know. I mean, they'll go wherever they're told, of course, but look, I just think that it's probably 101 chance that we finish bottom and pick him up. But I think that if Horn was genuinely our target, then we needed to be a bit more strategic than what we have been.
All right, so I'm going to throw this at you, and I'm looking at the time. Don't worry.
No, that's fine, mate. I'm good.
I'm going to throw this at you. Given we've got a lot of young players, and given that we've got a real dip in the graph in the sort of 22 to 26 age bracket.
Yeah, we have.
And given that we've got a couple of second-round picks and a little bit of currency, maybe with Matty Crouch, on the table, or taking up free agency. I can see a club like Gold Coast looking at him, particularly now that poor old Huey's gone down. Is there any merit in cutting our losses at pick 3 or 4 or whatever we have and going for a bona fide 24-year-old midfielder, existing midfielder in the draft, currently in the competition? And I haven't got a name. I'm just throwing the proposition out there.
I'd reckon we're maybe one draft too early. I'd certainly push it next year. I wouldn't mind just one more drink this year at a top 5 pick. But with that said, Fiend, I guess the all important thing is the name. Who is it? And if you could get someone who was had 100 games up and he was in that sort of age bracket, and look, don't forget, there's a couple of, and I know that all of the listeners will laugh at me, but there's a couple of free agents sitting out there that are right in that bracket that are a free hit, and that's obviously Luke Dunstan at St Kilda, who still hasn't signed. He's a free agent, and Dumont. Now they're not fashionable, but Dunstan's game on the weekend, he was epic, and he played an outstanding game. And then you've got, and Dumont's not fashionable at all. But did you watch the last quarter?
Oh yeah,
of North Melbourne and West Coast.
Yeah.
So he was the one that pulled out the 2 big smothers in there. He's ugly and he's not fashionable, but he does get it done both ways, and he's a very, very hard running defensive wingman. And so I'm not sure that we don't need someone, and they're right in that zone. So look, I take what I absolutely take what you're saying, and that is that we've had this discussion, Fiend, and it is a huge problem. There's a huge problem, that 22 to 28-year-old bracket.
Yeah,
where we don't have guys at around about that 100 games.
Well, I think it's disrupting our rebuild, to be honest with you, because I think they're loath to play too many kids in the team, and I can understand the thinking. But our Rory Sloane's output continues to be a concern. We're too stodgy in the midfield. We don't have any class on the outside. And we've spoken about that. Lachie Scholl's probably a couple of years away from really cementing himself as a premier outside player just because of his build. We've got Miller coming back, and that's all good. I just wonder whether, I think a lot depends on what happens with Matty Roberts, because I think obviously, he'll get back for the championships now, won't he?
I hope so. So he, I have heard that it was it's a nasty injury. I think it's worse than Draper's.
Yeah.
But so anyway, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Yeah. It is September, so is it still a way off? So.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. So he may be able to show his wares, but you would think that he may slip a little bit if he doesn't get on the park. But I don't think he slips out of top 10, do you?
No, definitely not. Not a chance.
He
not a guy that was... No.
Yeah, he might slip to about 6 to 8, but even that would be doubtful. I still think he probably goes top half a dozen. I just wonder. It's just something that's played on my mind.
No, I think you're right. I think you're not far off it in terms of that thought process, because I think it's a huge worry in this rebuild that we've got that in 3, 4, 5 years time, when Harry's on sort of 70 or 80 games.
Yeah.
And then Sloane, Laird. Keys is in the zone.
Yeah.
But you've got experienced guys who are ready to fall off the cliff.
Yeah.
Laird, he's 28, I think, isn't he? 28 or 29.
Yeah, he's a year older than Cam, so he's 28. Yep.
So the end could come sooner rather than later for Rory as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so who are going to be the experienced players when we're getting these kids to 70, 80, 90 games? Who are going to be the 150 to 200 gamers?
Yeah.
They're going to be gone.
Yeah. That's the problem that I see, that gap. there. We've got Harry and we've got Sam Berry, obviously, who will eventually be our midfielders, you would think, along with Pedler. But they're green as anything. Pedler's going to be lucky to hit 5 games by the end of the season. They don't seem to want to run Sam through the midfield much. He's played predominantly up forward. Harry got some more minutes on the weekend doing a run with role, but he's had spasmodic runs through the midfield. So we'll see more of those threes, you would think, in hiccups in 22.
Yep.
I just wonder, it's just got me thinking. You either throw the kitchen sink and try to get Horn for a bit of class, and that outside, class that you want. Do you just accept defeat and take a Roberts at 5 or 4 or whatever, or do you think, all right, well, is there someone around that is around the 100 game mark that maybe just on the fringes but tracking up? The bloke that I'm thinking of is the kid from Sydney. Pete, what's his name? Dawson. I think he put out he put out a statement through the week that for Sydney fans not to be concerned, they're just working through the details. Yeah, Pat said that too.
I don't think you'll get him. I reckon if you're going to do it, Fian, it's got to be a bona fide midfielder. Which Jordan's not.
Could be though.
See, the Billy Four Eyes is the one that we really, really miss is Miller. Miller is the one that he's the one you want him to be at 100 games now, and to have developed into a midfielder.
Yeah.
But he's a real missing piece of the puzzle. So anyway, fingers crossed we can get him back. But I don't think we'll get Dawson. They're talking about going after Stevens.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Is he the answer? I don't know about that. He's performed particularly well. He's performed particularly well in the seconds, but it's not a hugely strong thing. I don't know.
I think he'd be expensive for what he'd bring.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it needs to be an up and coming midfielder currently playing ones, but maybe not quite. It hasn't got the. There's not enough space on the list or whatever, or in the rotations to get him into the first rotation or whatever. I haven't got a name.
Lipinski from the Bulldogs, maybe.
Yep.
He seems to be sort of there and thereabouts. But
yeah. So anyway, look,
quite possibly
it's going to be interesting to follow.
Hopper. Now, wouldn't you love Hopper from GWS?
Wow. Is that doable?
Did you see him play on the weekend? His last quarter, he is great. I love him.
Yeah, that's not.
He would be now Hopper is someone. Hopper is someone that I reckon you go to GWS with pick 4 or 5 and a wad of cash and say, I'd for 4 or 5, pick 4 or 5, I'd go after Hopper.
Pick 4 or 5, and Himmelberg.
Yep. Chuck in Himmelberg and also some Easter buns, and I'd grab Hopper.
Yeah. So I guess that's the kind of deal that I'm thinking about if we can't work a trade for one.
Yep. Thanks, Surf's House, for putting him up as an option, because I think he's exactly in that zone, Fiend, that you're talking about.
Yeah. No, good on you. As usual, Pete, we rely on our bloody chatters to fill in the blanks. Oh, pardon me. All right. Well, look, we've probably done that to death, and a lot of people would have been looking forward to your deep dive into Isaiah Dudley. Unfortunately, again, as people see, I've suited up. There's a bit of I don't know whether you can see, Pete. You probably can't, but I'm in the business clubber, so I'm all suited up, bringing a bit of class to the show tonight. And that's hopefully to make up for the fact that I didn't get any footage. So never mind. But why don't we get straight in and talk about Isaiah, shall we?
Yeah, look, I really do want to talk about Isaiah because I love him to bits. So he's a 168 centimetre midfielder playing for Centrals at the moment. He has absolutely dominated under 18s. He's just smashed it. He is now playing reserves. Yes, NT Rabbit. He is a midget. And he is pushing forward, and against the men in reserves, he's now pushing towards what would be his natural position on an AFL list, which would be that really dynamic small forward. Now, before anybody, before I get too many more of the midget comments, Melbourne took a massive gamble and used pick 12 last year on Cozzy Pickett, and Cozzy Pickett's only 170, and Dudley he has got pace, he has got explosiveness, and the great thing about Dudley is that he is an absolutely manic tackler. Okay, so in his in his 10 under 18 games this year, he stuck 65 tackles in his 10 games.
That's huge for a midget.
Huge for a midget, but in his 3 reserves games, he stuck 19 tackles in 3 reserves games. So he is a kid who will he'll chase, harass, he'll tackle. And I just think that he's got really, really good explosive pace out of clearance, out of stoppage. He's a great clearance player. And the great thing is that unlike Newchurch, Centrals have used Dudley as a midfielder in the under 18s. And so he's got that contested, really hard contested side of his game down pat.
Yeah.
So, he may well end up at 170. But the beauty of Isaiah, of course, is he's an NGA. He's one of our NGAs. Okay, so provided he doesn't get picked between 1 and 20, which I don't think he will because of his size, although Cozzy Pickett did smash that ceiling last year.
Yeah.
Or was it the year before? Might have been the year before, actually.
The year before.
Pickett got drafted.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'd be very, very surprised if he goes before 20. I don't think he will, depending on his champs. But once he gets past 20, then he's an NGA for us. Now, there's a couple of things with that. He could float through to our Cat B list and we get him for nothing. But we've already got 2 on our Cat B list, and both of those 2 went through last year, and they've both been signed to 2-year contracts.
Yeah.
So I can't see us booting Borlays on Newchurch, and unless there's any change to the rules, we can only have 2 on that Cat B list. So we've got them. So we are going to have to put Isaiah on the main list if we do get him. I just think that, and I know that I come on here every week, Fiend, and I try and sell you South Australian players, but I think small forward is a need for us, and I think we can get him super, super dirt cheap. We'll be able to get him for peanuts. So as an NGA player, and so I think that we can let him go right. I think we've got a pick in the 70s.
Yes, we do.
Pretty sure.
Yes, we do.
So he could drift right through to there, or whatever it ends up costing, and he would be a great pickup for that small pressure forward. We don't have. And Vardy Magic, absolutely, he is manic physicality. Okay, this kid, he'll chase you outside of the ground, and so yes, he's physical, but he's small, and so whether you're going to, but he's kicking his 2 and kicked. I think in his first reserves game, he's had I think something like 9 possessions, 8 tackles, and 2 goals or something. So I mean, it's not to be sneezed at in your first game of reserves football.
No, that's right. And I'm just taking a screenshot here for those who haven't seen Isaiah, and I'll just put it up on the screen momentarily when I work out my life. Let me just have a look here. But he looks nuggety. I think someone said Graham Johncock. Johncock turned into a specimen by the end of his career, but I think Isaiah has the potential to have a similar build. Extremely low centre of gravity, but he's not light like McHenry or Chase Jones or someone like that.
No,
he's quite nuggety,
you can't be sticking those tackles if you've got no strength.
No, that's 100% right, mate. So let me just see what I'm doing here.
Firewalker makes a good point that actually, and I didn't think about that. Thanks to our audience once again. But yes, you could put Borlase or Newchurch to the normal rookie list and free up that cap B spot. You could do it that way.
So I've just put Isaiah up on the screen for those who are watching, and you can see he's got a good build for a kid. I'm with you. I'm not sold on Jimmy Rowe whatsoever.
No.
Tariq is still a couple of years away, and we've got a lot of. There's actually a lot of chat about my freaking suit here at the moment. Let me just clear a couple of things up. It's Peter Shearer, not Roger David, and my shirt's blue, not grey. It's just coming up as grey on the thing. Now that's all I'm going to say.
They're very interested in it.
Oh, yeah.
Is that Dudley's mark?
No. It's just him giving off.
Okay.
Yeah. So, look, I'm with you, Peter, 100% on Isaiah. I think he's well worth it. And I can't see him getting picked up in the 20s or before 20.
No.
And that gives us options, in my opinion. So, be interesting to see.
But thanks, Barty Magic. The link that he put up there was that specky that Dudley took.
Oh, right, okay.
But he look, everyone thought, why would you draft Cozzy Pickett, a 170 centimetre, small forward, and yet we all just marvel at what it's like. You think now, would you like a Cozzy Pickett type in your team?
Oh, of course you would.
Of
course you would.
Of course you would. And so the business about, well, he's a midget. Well, okay. Yep, he's a midget, but you know what? If I've got the ball, I don't want to have to try and dance around him, and I don't care how small he is, because you know what? He is burying me 3 meters under. Isaiah is. He is an aggressive, physical player, and so you need that as a small forward. So I don't propose that he's going to make it in AFL as a midfielder because of his size. But what's his weapon? His weapon is that he is a manic tackler.
Yeah.
And he's quick and he's explosive, and he can win clearances. And so I think he would just be really, really dangerous in our forward 50. Yeah, good pace, VM, good pace.
And pardon me, let's be honest, we had 3 tackles inside 50 on the weekend, so forward 50 pressure isn't our strong point at the moment, Peter.
No, it's not. And Barty, he's got quick enough closing speed. You just don't rack up that many tackles in football if you're not quick and you're not strong. You just don't. The stats, in that situation, I think the stats speak for themselves.
Yeah, you won't complete that number of tackles. You might attempt that many, but you won't. You won't complete them.
Especially now he's playing against men. He's playing against men now.
Yeah, well, that's 100% right. The thing about Jimmy Rowe is he always looks better when he's up the ground. He's not providing any value at all as a small forward. Lockie Murphy plays like a 6'8" bloody ruckman when he plays, so he's not small forward. Ned McHenry doesn't have any goal sense. He's not a small forward. We definitely do need a goal-scoring forward who can apply defensive pressure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There you go.
So there you go. Have I sold you? So hopefully now we should be drafting about 6 South Australian kids onto our list.
Yeah. Well, what it shows, Peter, is that there's a good opportunity for us to repeat the strategy of last season and go heavy on South Australian kids if we've got the opportunity, because there's plenty of them. I expect us to do really well again at this year's championships when they're eventually played, notwithstanding a couple of injuries that we've had during the season. And those boys will be champing at the bit to show their wares ahead of the AFL draft being so close to that championships. So it should be a high-quality championships, I would have thought. And Isaiah's another kid that it'll be very interesting to see how many midfield minutes they give him, or whether they have him purely as a small forward.
Yeah, and look, I'll tell you, if nothing else, Fane, at least our audience, when they tune into those champs, they will know our South Australian team.
100%. Who we got next week, mate? Have you got anyone lined up at this stage? Have we got any left?
No, look, there's others, and I'll have a dig around because we're getting now into the sort of the rookie. You know, there's a kid by the name of Shay Linky out at Centrals who played some league football.
Yeah.
He'll be in the draft, and he's in the state side, so he'll be around the place. I haven't looked at Hugh Jackson yet. I'm not a massive G for Hugh, but we can have a look at him. Lewis Racing. Oh yeah, we did look at Lewis, didn't we?
We did Lewis last week. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple still out there. So I'll dig some out. We'll keep
Very
going.
good.
Don't worry.
Yeah. Well, look, and once we've done that, we might be at a point there where we can have a look at some of the Victorian kids that have got some exposed form this year as well now.
That's right.
And just see if we can fill in a few blanks and maybe find a good pick for North Melbourne and Hawthorn so that they don't care about Jason Horn.
Yeah, that's right. Someone like Hobbs or something like that.
Yeah, I don't care who it is. All right. Well, look, it doesn't look like anyone wants to chat with us tonight, Peter. But that was a good look at Isaiah. Well worth it. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube and Discord, of course. Thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon. We will be back on Sunday night for the weekend wrap with Macca and maybe Nikki to cover another resounding loss to West Coast as we strive for pick 1 or 2. In the meantime, take it easy, everyone, and we'll see you later on.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Fane.